Psalm 120. 120. Hear my distress. I cried to the Lord and he heard me. Deliver my soul, Lord, from lion licks and from the deceitful tongue. What shall we give into you? What shall be done to you, false tongue? Sharp arrows of the warrior with coals of the boom tree. Woe is me that is sojourn in Meshach, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. My soul is too long, one who hates peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. Psalm 120 is Psalm in the 11th hour. It is the first one of 15 called the Song of Ascents. Song of Ascents. It has the title Song of Ascents from 120 to Psalm 120 to 134. They all are titled A Song of Ascents. And pretty much we don't know who the author or authors are of the Song of Ascents, the 15. What does the Song of Ascents mean? There are many contemplations. There is no clear answer. I'll say the one I like the most. The one I like the most, I think, is that these songs were sung on the pilgrimage to Jerusalem and on the way to Jerusalem, and possibly also why this contemplation seems the most valid, personally to me, is because Jerusalem does have like a little bit of elevation of sea level, like it's a little bit higher above sea level. So it kind of makes more sense to say that it is a song of ascent in a physical way, even. What are some other contemplations? Could be like a musical instrument. Music could be instrument, could be elevated voice, return from captivity, sung well and from captivity, like from the land of estrangement. When you're far from God. The other one is literally like 15 steps from the outer court to the inner court. I think that might be mentioned in one of the books, Ezekiel, I think. Like in a metaphorical sense, the degrees of spiritual life, returning to God, having like growing spiritually, elevated heart, that kind of thing. One other thing is it's kind of like the peak psalms, like the Psalm of Psalms, the top psalms, kind of like like the Song of Songs. When the song has got his like Song of Songs, so it's got like the top songs. So these are like the peak, pinnacle Psalm of Psalms. Could be just like a title, like kind of the Psalm of Psalms, Song of Ascents. And then I guess what I like, Bishop was saying that in any case, these psalms should be said on our way to church. Like if the Israelites were saying these psalms on the way to pilgrimage to Jerusalem, or and then the Gentiles, we could say even saying these psalms on the way to Jerusalem and ascending, we also should say them now as the Gentiles on the way to church, like Psalm 123. I was glad when they said to me to go into the house of the Lord and so forth. So yeah, I'm not sure. Other titles are a song of. It's not like words of ascent. A song of ascent. There's degrees. I was just reading in one of the Bible translations, degrees, maybe even steps, but the one I was reading is degrees. So yeah. Literal title in the New King James, in Hebrew, a song of ascent. The author is unknown for Psalm 120, pretty much like all the Psalms from 120 to 134, the 15 Song of Ascents. Could be, I guess, other authors. One source was pretty adamant that it was Hezekiah, relating to the 15 years when God gave him 15 more years. Problems are 15 4 years. So this is like, okay, the Song of Ascents are 15 times in consecutive order. I don't know if that's a good argument. Verse 1. In my distress, I cried to the Lord and he heard me. Like it could be David writing this psalm. Let's go with it. In any case, the author, he's saying that he's assured of God's answering him in the past, like he's answering him from previous experience, and that's why he trusts in God's faithfulness. The author takes refuge in him, and Christ did the same. Christ, when he was in stress, he cried to the Lord in the Garden of Gethsemane. And this is kind of like the first step. And then we know that God answers us, and he heard me. May not answer in the way we want. I've talked about this many times, but he heard me, and he's confident in that. And then one can grow spiritually from that point. If you cry out to God, God hears you, and you grow spiritually. And it's important you have to grow spiritually, because if you do, you're going to be shut down. You can't like stay stagnant in the spiritual life. You have to keep aiming to struggle, otherwise you will fall down. Verse 2, deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips and from a deceitful tongue. So if this is David writing this psalm, the author, it could be like the tongue of Doeg. Doeg was, of course, against him. Could be like with Christ, the scribes and Pharisees, when Judas kissed him, also betrayed him, or any false witnesses, I guess, in his court trial, and then people against him in general. False teachers in the future could be like the false teachers, like the heretics, time of Arius and so forth. Could be the devil himself, is the father of all lies. And Yusuf was saying, we see this today in the modern day with the deception of the world, people being deceived by teachings of abortion, homosexuality, transgenderism, etc., all under the charade or the mask of tolerance, even though they're actually intolerant, but all under a mask. Under we love everyone, but we're against if you preach Christianity. That's flawed. Verse 3. What shall be given to you, or what shall be done to you, false tongue? So again, this could be either addressing that the person has a deceitful tongue, or it could be the tongue itself. In any case, it's deceit. And it's a warning to the person, a warning in general, that there is a consequence, a punishment for people who deceive. And I guess we can relate that the author experienced this on a personal level, deception among people around him, probably even his close advisors. And even Christ's disciples fled, and Christ's close disciple betrayed him, tried to deceive him, deceive the people. 4, sharp arrows of the warrior with coals of the broom tree. I mean, when you have an arrow, you have to have a bow to shoot it, like an archery. And it could be, like we said, either addressing himself, the punishment to the person, or punishment to the deceitful tongue. And just in general, it's kind of like a consequence. It's a punishment. Sharp arrows of the warrior. Are you going to be judged? Because an arrow is sharp and it kills. One shot of an arrow can kill someone, especially at full speed. It will kill someone. And there was a powerful form of a weapon. It was a weapon in old times before guns, obviously. The broom tree is interesting. The broom tree is actually a real tree, like it's a species of tree, and it burns for a long time. It's very fierce. It's a tree, and it burns for long. It's very fierce, and it yields like charcoal. And I'll just quote this: a broom tree Arabs made charcoal of the finest quality from the street, charcoal that makes the hottest fire and retains heat for the longest time. So that's pretty interesting about a broom tree. And again, for the symbolic way of talking about judgment. Judgment. Severe, it'll be like a severe punishment. If you commit severe sin, which is deception is a severe sin, you're deceiving people, either willingly or unwillingly, it will be a severe punishment, severe judgment. 5. Woe is me that woe is me that I dwell in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. And it's interesting because Meshech and Kedar are like places they're mentioned in the Old Testament. And long story short, they're far away from each other. They're not close by. You can't live in both places at the same time. Every author says the same thing. You can't. Or every commentator on some says you can't live in both places. So it's a metaphor to show that like the ungodly people. It's a metaphor for ungodly people. Kedar, just a bit of background. Meshech was the son of Japheth in the book of Genesis, and it refers to a distant place away from Israel. And Kedar is the second son of Ishmael, and as opposed to Isaac, which was the light, Kedar is darkness, and sin is darkness. Being ungodly is darkness, not the light. And it also is like a tent, that Ramadan tents of Kedar. The tent is like a temporary, it's like referring to temporary. You set up a tent, it's only for a short time. You hope to, have like permanent shelter. It's temporary and referring to the present life. And the dwelling is the same concept. Dwelling, we live here forever. We're sojourners in, and just like the ungodly, the ungodly people, like Israelites are surrounded by ungodly people, like Sodom and Gomorrah, the Amorites and the Hittites, etc. Verse 6. My soul has dwelt too long with one who hates peace. Not much to say there, other than it's just the author is in a difficult situation. It's not. I don't think it just refers to the literal. My soul. It could be still too long with hates. This could be also referring to this guy. You got the physical aspect as well, psychological, emotional aspect. He's in a difficult position. And too long, yeah. Is that really a time frame? Is it a day? Is it a period of time, an era? Probably, yeah. It's more metaphor. It has a symbolic meaning. Last verse. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. And Christ says he uses the sword will perish by the sword. He was never about violence. He always taught us to be peacemakers. And when Peter used the sword, cut off the person, Christ healed him in the Garden of Gethsemane. He healed him. He said, "Those use the sword perish by the sword." And we want to be like a lamb amongst wolves. And I like the example that I think Sandra Wilson said, a lamb amongst wolves. It's a bit like Stephen and Paul when Saint Stephen was being stoned. He was the lamb and Paul was the wolf. But because of his good example, he can able to convert, at least partially help convert the wolf soul to becoming Saint Paul. And verse 7 and 1 are kind of like opposites. In my distress, cried to the Lord, and you heard me. And I am for this. 7, I am for this when I speak therefore. Well, it's kind of the opposite. Most Psalms, a lot of Psalms, they start off a negative tone, mournful tone, and then they end in a positive, praising, thankful tone. This is the opposite. Starts off positive and then ends in a different way. It's the reverse order, a bit unusual. And God is still on his throne always. He is in control. Um, yeah, he will vindicate us. He will vindicate us in the war, because people are against us, therefore war. But God always vindicate us. He will give us victory in the battle, victory in the war. He is the higher power. So I think it is a nice psalm, especially when the first of the 15 Song of Ascents.